I thought it was excellent. Excellent.
Really? Okay.
Okay.
The debate was great. It was great. I thought Jahana was excellent, so she was just outstanding.
So I have a veterans for Jahana, and we got a bunch of veterans going for Jahana.
Yes, she understands all oppressed people. My family is going through a situation. My children are American citizens. My wife is up for her permanent, she's a permanent resident, but is up to renew it. Unfortunately, with the Muslim ban, we can't renew it because of our faith. And I believe Jahana is the one who could understand and who would fight for it.
Your mom?
She did great, but she always does great. That's just her. So
She's strict at home because she's a teacher.
I never got in trouble. So
Do you always do your homework?
yeah, I was a good student.
Thank you.
Candidates. And I love primaries because primaries allow us to learn more about our candidates. It gives them a chance to sharpen their focus and tell us more about them and have more of a platform to stand on.
I just want to welcome everybody here to the Alexandria Room in Edmonton Town Hall. My name is Eric Paradis. I'm the chair of the Newtown DTC. So we're here today to have a discussion and interview one of our next congresswoman from the 5th District of Connecticut. So big round of applause for Mary Jahana. So we'd just like to start off, we can all rise and salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So again, welcome. I'm just going to go over the format really quickly for all the folks in the audience. We've already gone over it up here. I have a 3-minute opening statement from each. I would ask that we hold applause and cheering and all of our friends with signs, keep our signs in our laps so the people in the back can see. We probably have more questions than we're going to be able to get to in our hour. So with that, we did the coin toss before, so I'm going to turn it over to Mary Glassman for opening remarks.
Thank you, Newtown Democratic Town Committee, for hosting this very important forum. It's great to be back to this wonderful, resilient, and strong and loving community. I really appreciate everybody who took the time out of a beautiful July summer day to be part of the democratic process here in Newtown. I am so proud to be here as a Democratic candidate for United States Congress. To be part of the check and balance on this administration, which is so desperately needed. But as a kid growing up in New Britain, I would never, in my wildest imaginations, ever imagine that I would be running for Congress. I came from a family of immigrants. My grandmother spoke only Italian. My family was a working class family. My father was a machinist. My mother was a seamstress. And life was really pretty good. We worked hard, played by the rules, until one day everything changed. My dad died very suddenly. I was 4, my brothers were 2, 8, and 9. We found ourselves really in a bad way. And we found ourselves, for the first time, living on Social Security and veterans benefits because my dad had served in the military. And that, for the first time, taught me that government can be there to help you survive when you need it, and also to thrive when you need it. And when it came time to go to school, government was there again. I was able to go to UConn. I was able to pay for it on my own, work odd jobs, pay my way through college, come back and work as a newspaper reporter in the hometown I grew up in. And then government was there again. I was able to work as a reporter and go to law school at night. Work all day, go to law school at night, pay $500 a semester. I can't do that today. Met my husband in law school. Andy's here with me today. Started practicing law, started raising our 3 children. But I always felt that tug and that obligation to give back to the government that gave so much to me. So for the past 25 years, I have worked every day as a public servant to make a difference in people's lives. I worked for 16 years as a public official, first Democrat elected in 40 years in the town I served. Getting up, going to work every day, trying to make a difference for seniors, for veterans, trying to provide a good education for the community I live in, and also to speak at the state level for children who don't have such a good access to education. And then I had the opportunity to go up to the Capitol, where I was legal counsel to the first woman Speaker of the House. What an honor. And to work in the state Senate, and to be chief of staff in Lieutenant Governor's office, and to write legislation on so many important issues: mental health, environment, education. And for the past 2 years, I've been an advocate for children, an advocate for equity in education. And now I'm running for Congress to make sure that your family has the same opportunity that I had growing up in Connecticut. It's really important to me. But as I travel around the district over the last few weeks, it's not my story or the story of anyone who's running for office. It's your story. And that's what we're going to talk about today. The things that are important to you, the things that keep you up at night, the things that you worry about, that this president is hurting our country and our state. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric, and to the Newtown Democratic Town Committee for hosting this event and inviting me to come here. Is it on? The green light is on? Yeah. I'm very excited by the presence in this room today because it says to me that people are listening, that people are being thoughtful and purposeful with their votes and with their concerns. I entered this race or this campaign never ever imagining that I'd be in a room and people would be listening to what I have to say. Because I've lived a life where people don't generally listen to me. When we talk about reasons why people enter public service, there's lots of reasons. For me, I come with a different level of investment because I have an equity lens that has been so sharpened, almost precision-tuned, because of the life I've lived. People talk a lot about my experiences growing up, but that is not the totality of my experiences. I was raised in public housing in Waterbury. My grandmother raised me. My mother struggled with addiction. I got pregnant at 17. And many people look at that as oppression. I look at that as a blessing because all of those experiences have taught me what it means to be marginalized. All of those experiences have taught me what it means when you have no voice and people don't hear you. So I went to school because I knew that education would save my life. I knew that education would be a game changer and close the equity gap that I had known all of my life. I worked nights, realized that wasn't enough. Got a second job, still wasn't enough. Got a third job. I worked 3 jobs and went to school full-time. Started at community college, went on to Southern, got my bachelor's degree, went on to the University of St. Joseph's, got a master's degree, and then on to the University of Bridgeport and got an advanced degree in education and supervision. Went back into the city that had done so much for me. Because the thing about my family, they didn't talk about education. Everything I learned about school, I learned at school. So people who for no other reason than it was the right thing to do invested in me. That's where I learned how to invest in people. Went back to my community and have spent the last 15 years fighting for people who don't have a voice. In a very different way. You're going to hear a lot today about experience and what experience looks like. What I want to tell you is that there are different ways of gaining valuable experience. I have experience fighting to get curriculum on the books, petitioning parents to sign, going to the Board of Education and finding the money to create an African American history curriculum in my school because it was not there. I have experience going to the state capitol to testify over and over and again, and sitting on the Commission of Human Rights to fight for teacher recruitment and teacher development. I have experience traveling the country and the world, sitting at the table with chiefs of states, with executive officers, talking about what we need and how we get it done. I have experience working with no resources to get what people most crucially need. I've done it, time and time again. In 2016, I was named the National Teacher of the Year. I was told teachers from Waterbury don't become the Connecticut Teacher of the Year. Teachers from Title I school districts are not recognized in the same way. I rejected that. Why not? We have to have a congressional delegation and a legislation that recognize the value and the dignity of all people and understands that everyone has something valuable to bring. I hope that you'll hear that today and leave, giving me your support on August 14th. Thank you.
And again, these questions came from the website. Over 20 questions were submitted from all around the area. So these are the questions that were submitted. So what do you feel is your strongest area of policy? What broader national or global policy expertise do you bring to this race?
Thanks, Eric. My strongest asset is my experience living, working, and advocating in the district. You know, being a public servant, could I just show a hands of everybody who serves as a volunteer or on a board, on a commission? I mean, that's where the rubber meets the road. That's where our communities really make a difference. That's where we protect our education, where we look out for each other. And, you know, in the 16 years that I served as chief elected official, it's hard. It's not glamorous. You know, you pave the roads, you work for education, you make sure there's special education. And what I hear of all across the district is somebody that has experience and knows how to work as a consensus builder can make a difference in the halls of Congress. So when this president rolls back special education regulations, we need someone who understands how to implement special ed and has worked with paraprofessionals and has balanced budgets to go up to Washington and make sure that we protect and make sure that those kids get the support that they need. And when this president rolls back the regulations, environmental regulations, we need someone who fought to stop removing of millions of gallons of water from the Farmington River. And didn't just stop there, but went up to the state capitol and advocated for a state water plan, which I'm proud to say was signed by executive order by the governor last week. We need someone who understands that local, state, and federal governments are linked together. So when I'm in Congress, I'm going to create a firewall of local, state, and federal officials to really work against this president, to stop this president, and to make sure that we protect this state and our local communities against all of the unraveling that this president's trying to do.
Thank you.
Look at what happens in Congress. There's about 500 different bills that are put on the floor every year. So the one thing that I think a strong representative needs to have is the ability just to connect with people, relationship building, consensus building, the ability to find value and dignity in all people. What I've done in my campaign, just in the last couple weeks, is to begin to close that enthusiasm gap surrounding this election. Mobilizing voters, energizing people to get involved, to sit up, to pay attention. That's what we have to do as a party. This isn't about elected officials working alone. It's about elected officials working with people in the community who care about the same issues and getting things done. When I was just a classroom teacher in Waterbury, there was a challenge of families leaving the district, putting their kids in parochial school or moving out because they thought our public school system was failing. I restructured a program known as the SOAR program and kept families in the city. It was the most sought after program and was duplicated in every school with no budget, with no money, just having people in the community coalesce around me and work on what we thought was important. The other thing I think has to happen with any representative who represents this district, as dynamic and diverse as it is all people have to have a place at the table. When you look at the team I put around me and my campaign, I was purposeful and intentional about getting all different perspectives, all different voices, all different nationalities, all different languages on my team, at the table, in a meaningful and purposeful way. That's the kind of leader I would like to be, so that everybody can find themselves represented in the narrative. Without that, without bringing people first, we can't even begin to work hard for you.
I thought it was amazing. I thought she did a great job, and 17 more days to victory.
So what are the main issues facing Newtown and communities similar to ours, and what will you do from Congress to address those issues?
Well, what I found as I travel is that all of our communities are facing similar issues, whether it is the cities, whether it's the suburbs, whether it's our rural communities, and at the center of those is really our future and the future of our children. But whenever you talk about Newtown, the first thing people think about is gun violence prevention. I take that seriously. Connecticut is a state that has statutes, and we've done well in a post-Newtown era, but I know that there's so much work that needs to be done. My husband is a police officer. We have firearms in our home. One of the things that we fall short on in the state is that we don't have laws that require gun owners to safely store their guns. I am a teacher. It pains me when I hear about a tragedy that could have been prevented because the writing was on the wall and it wasn't reported. Because the people who could have been the first line of defense, you don't know how many times I said, I knew this kid was in trouble. We have to have the wraparound services that support and allow us to identify and make sure that those things are stopped before they happen. But it can't just be in a town like Newtown. It has to be everywhere. We cannot begin to fight for things only when they affect us. We have to fight for just because it's the right thing to do. I grew up in a community where I went to bed to gunshots every night. I live in a city, or I work in a city in Waterbury, where gun violence is a constant issue. It has to be something that is prioritized in the state, and we are bold and unapologetic about moving forward.
Newtown is a special place in our hearts throughout Connecticut, and we're so proud of your community and how you've stood up and your strength and your resilience and how you've come back and you've been advocates for not only our state, but for all across the country. So I would be proud to stand with you and for you in Washington to get some of the common sense regulations that we have passed in our own state passed in Congress. Everywhere I travel throughout the district, people can't believe that we haven't done anything in Congress to stop the gun violence throughout our country. We know the statistics of every day. We lose more children. We lose more children to gun violence. We haven't really done enough locally, but we haven't done statewide, but we can do more. We can do more in Congress. But this administration has made it even harder, because as we fight for common sense gun regulations, as we fight for background checks and bans on bump stocks, we have a new threat, and that's 3D printers. This administration has just rolled back the right of people to download instructions for guns on 3D printers and increase the number of ghost guns that aren't regulated by all the things that you fought so hard for. All of the advocacy at the state capitol, all of the testimony, all of the advocacy that our congressional delegation did in Washington. And this administration changes the regulation overnight. And that's what we're up against. It's hard because we are seeing an administration that's not changing things by rule or regulation, but by whim overnight.
Thank you.
I think the most important thing that we have to do and that we have to remember is as these regulations are rolled back, the Connecticut delegation can't do anything alone. There's only 5 of them. We have to make sure that people are sitting up and holding leaders accountable to vote the will of the people. The majority of people overwhelmingly support legislation surrounding gun violence prevention, universal background checks, all of the safety measures that we started in Connecticut. A good representative is going to go out and get representatives from other states to do the same thing.
Thank you. Should there be federal standards for education, or should it be determined on a local level?
Both. We need federal standards. We have the ESSA. We need federal regulation that provides good quality education. But we need state regulation that requires that we provide equity in education throughout our districts. And I was in New Britain yesterday, where I grew up. And the fact that only 48% of the kids in New Britain are ready for college, attend college readiness courses. And 92% of other towns have college readiness. It means that our kids aren't getting an equitable education. So we need to make sure in our state that we fight for that. I was one of the first mayors to sign on to the CJEF case suing the state of Connecticut. And I see my friend, former first selectman of Newtown, who stood up and said every kid in Connecticut deserves the right to reach their full potential regardless of where you live. And that's really important, and that's what we need to fight for. But there are programs that do require federal legislation. SNAP programs that feed kids at the Capital Region Education Council. We fought to make sure that entire schools were eligible for free and reduced lunch programs. So there would be no stigma. So there wouldn't be a kid who couldn't afford lunch sitting next to a kid who could afford lunch. That makes such a difference. So that's an example of a good program. But this administration, this president, is now trying to roll back that very program that feeds children. We need to do everything. We need to lock our hands with local, state, and federal officials and be a firewall against this administration in education.
Thank you.
I think we absolutely need federal standards for education. The first opportunity I had to meet our current Secretary of Education, she said something to me that I have not forgotten. She said, I want to move government out of the way so that parents can make the decision for their children surrounding education. And the first thing I thought was, what would happen to a child like me, who does not have a parent, or who did not have someone to advocate for them? Isn't that your job, Madam Secretary? So we absolutely have to have some federal standards. I've traveled all over the country, and there are places like Mississippi and Alabama where education is shameless, and it doesn't even feel like I was still in this country. We have so many kids that move from state to state and such transient populations. We have to have a national standard for what is being taught in this country. When I traveled around the world, one of the first things that people said to me was how impressed they were with the American education system. We educate our children. That's what we do as a country. We have to have federal standards that look at the way teachers are prepared to make sure that students have high-quality instructors in front of them. Because the number one factor in student success is the quality of the teachers in front of them. We have to have a national standard so that no state could even entertain the possibility of arming a teacher. No state. But we also have to have local standards, because that's where the funding comes from. You should not have districts that are 10 miles apart where the education is unrecognizable. I know what education looks like. I know what works in education. And if you want a tireless advocate who could fight with fidelity on an issue that they know about, that's what I would do as your representative.
Yeah. 30 seconds?
Yeah, just quickly. We have the widest education gap in the country. I'm not impressed by that. I've lived my whole life in Connecticut. The fact that we have the richest kids and the poorest kids and just miles apart, it's not good enough. We're in a global economy. We need to better prepare our kids. We have 13,000 skilled labor jobs available right now, good paying jobs in manufacturing. They're going unfilled because our kids are not graduating with the skills they need to fill those jobs. Jobs that pay good wages, jobs that have good benefits. We need to connect the business community with the education communities and better prepare our kids for succeeding and surviving in our state.
Great, thank you. So our next question, I want to start off with Jahana. Would you support voucher programs to allow taxpayer funds to pay for religious or private charter schools?
I would not support any measure that takes public funding away from public education. I think that while I've spent a lot of time working and looking closely at what charter schools do, there are some public charter schools, and I think people don't really understand all of the nuances. The problem is, it gives a louder voice to the people who already have a voice. Because again, my family would not have been the family that went out to the meeting, that did the paperwork, that got me on the list to get into a charter school. It is our responsibility to make sure that children have a free and appropriate public education. Any measure that takes away from that does not understand the true investment that is education. I think that there are, and I get it, because there are so many parents who feel like it's not working and I have to do what's best for my child right now. But I don't think the answer is to begin to take public funding away from public education. The answer is to fix our public education system. And what I found is that for all these years, when policy was being crafted, there were no teachers at the table. We continue to have conversations that affect us and affect our communities, and nobody who actually lives in the communities or is affected by the changes that are happening are at the table. So again, on August 14th, put me at the table so that I can be your voice in Congress.
Good, Mary.
Thank you, Eric. No, I do not support vouchers because I don't think we're funding public education enough in our state as well already. You know, vouchers would destroy the money that we already put in. We have, just trying to make a point of the Supreme Court nominee. The new Supreme Court nominee already is going to threaten public education as well, with some of the bills that are in court. You know, I was trying to convey to you at CREC, we try to strive for a very diverse education program. And we try to reach parents that can't afford to feed their kids. And we try to find parents that need our help. But I can't tell you the challenge that Connecticut has with declining enrollment. And there's not enough money to even pay for infrastructure, for our schools. So every day when I go to work, I try to find ways to save money in educational services so we can put that money back into the classroom. Every day we try to find ways to save money in back office functions. We try to save money so we can hire teachers. But we see throughout Connecticut, teachers are being laid off. Administrators are being hired that are paid more than our teachers. We see special education teachers that are being laid off. Vouchers would destroy our system. And this secretary that this president has put in is supportive of vouchers. And she's also supportive of eliminating debt forgiveness for kids that need loans. So it's all across from pre-K to graduate school that we're not supporting education.
Thank you.
I mean, I have gotten so much grassroots support in my campaign. I had a woman write me a letter and say, I'm down to my last $5, but on the 25th when I get paid, I'm going to donate $27 to your campaign. It's a sacrifice, but I believe in you. I know that so many people don't even have the opportunity to do that, so I take that very personally. I have support from all over the country. 55% of my support came from the state, but what it says to me when people around the country donate is that they have the same challenges. So those are the representatives I'm going to target and find to coalesce and get this work moving forward.
Thank you. Our next question will start with Mary. How would you unite Connecticut's rural, urban, and suburban gun safety advocates to promote a united effort to enact common sense violence prevention laws?
Thanks, Eric. I know the power of working together because I've done it. I've worked with local, state, and federal officials to get things done, to pass Farmington River watershed protection of clean water. So gun safety is so important. I'm going to do what I'll do on every issue. When I'm first elected, I'm going to form a municipal officials cabinet. I'm going to have representation from all over the district, from all the 41 towns and cities. I want to start introducing elected officials to each other. I want to start to have them understand what our strengths and our weaknesses. As I looked around the district and tried to find statistics on, what are our assets, where are our challenges, how much infrastructure money do we need, so when I go to Washington, I can advocate for that transportation money. And it doesn't exist. We don't act like a region. We act like towns and cities separated by borders. And so this is a unique opportunity, the power to convene. As a congresswoman, I have this power to convene all of our public officials from the 41 towns and cities so we can get to know each other, so we can get to learn about the richness and the diversity and how we can help each other. It was so simple to me when we had the storm 5 years ago and we had power out for 10 days. And we had our emergency responders, we had our chamber, we had our school officials, we had our town officials. We all knew each other from throughout the Farmington Valley. We weren't introducing each other during an emergency. That's my vision for the 5th District. My vision is that we can come together, learn from each other, help each other, have a better understanding of what our communities need, and then go to Washington and fight for it.
Thank you. John. Sure. How would you unite Connecticut's rural, urban, and suburban gun safety advocates to promote a united effort to enact common sense violence prevention laws?
I think my problem with that question is the first part of the question. How would you unite rural, urban, and suburban communities? That's what it was?
Correct.
It doesn't matter where people are from. I would start by saying to people, are you concerned about the safety of your children? Are you concerned about the safety of your community? Are you concerned about what is happening in our country with gun violence? When you get back to the core of the issue and remind people of their concerns, it doesn't matter where they're from. Because I can tell you that a mother from the city hurts exactly the same as a mother from the country who loses their child. A mother from an urban area hurts exactly the same as a mother from a suburban area. So the problem is with geography. We're separating it as if it's a different issue. It is the same, no matter where you are in the state. And again, we have to work to come up with common sense gun reform that works in all of our communities and protects all of our children. We have to make sure that there are no boundary lines to the work that is being done. We have to unite people on common issues so that we can move them forward and stop looking at this as an urban or suburban problem. This is all of our problems. This is a problem that is permeating our schools and seeping into our communities. I think about, whenever I hear about gun violence or something that's happening, my husband is a black man and he carries a gun. In the 15 seconds that it takes for him to say, I am law enforcement, I know what can happen. We can't just worry about removing guns from off the streets. We have to stop guns from making it to the streets. We have to make sure that people are protected in our communities and not just respond when something happens.
Thank you. 30 seconds?
I do want to. Because I think it does matter. Because I think that towns and cities and urban and rural districts, they don't understand. They're not educated on the problems across the border. I think there is strength in making sure that people know how you feel in one community. They know what the sacrifices and what the struggles are in the other communities. We're not doing that in Connecticut. I've been a regional advocate in this state, lived in this state, I've worked in this state. Haven't traveled outside the state to advocate, stayed right here to make a difference in my community. And the lack of understanding of what happens in other communities, it holds us back. It holds us back because we can't help each other. Because we can't take extra resources from one town and put it to another. A food pantry, empty in New Britain. There's one overflowing in the next town, they don't know it. So my idea to get a cabinet of town officials from all over the district to work with state officials, to understand what their needs and the assets
Got a bunch of,
to make a difference.
I got to stop you there, thank you. So our next question, we'll start with Jahana. The Affordable Care Act is being taken apart piece by piece. What legislative remedies would you enact to ensure affordable health care?
I think that as a nation, We have to move towards a system that provides Medicare for all. We have to move towards a system where, just like every other industrialized nation in the world, people don't have to worry about being insured from the time they are born until the time they die. This is a bold statement, I know, because people say, well, how will we fund it and what does this look like? And there are so many variations of what it looks like, but the only way to do it is just to do it. You know, I think back to 2008 when people thought there's no way to have a national healthcare system. And part of the challenge with the Affordable Care Act, there are so many good things about it, but it was all incremental. And as soon as the House changed, it was halted. We have to make the commitment and say that as a nation, it is important enough to us to sit down and figure out what this looks like. How do we insure people? There is no reason why I should have been in a village in Africa and hear the same concerns about health care that I hear in communities in Connecticut. We have to just do it. You know, there's so many nuances and so many variations and so many versions of what this looks like, but I know what can't happen. We can't go back to what we had prior to the Affordable Care Act.
Thank you.
Here. Existing conditions are on the table. For people like me, I had cancer. I'm worried I may not be able to get coverage. For people who worry every day that they're going to lose their Medicare coverage, their Social Security coverage. That's a real threat every day. For people who can't afford the prescriptions, who take half a pill, people in the district that I talk to, they take half a pill because it lasts longer that way. Or people with food insecurity, who decide do you buy the prescriptions or do you buy the food that week. This is real. This is happening all throughout our districts. I'm for Medicare for all. But I had to balance 16 budgets. And you have to pay for it. So along the way, I'll work with anybody on anything that moves us to improve coverage for people. That means Medicare Part E, opening up Medicare for more people and buying access. That means making sure our health insurance exchanges on the Connecticut level are healthy and that we have providers to actually provide that access. And I'd like to see something better than sick care. I think what we have in this country is sick care. We want to make sure people have access to health when they need it. But let's focus on health care. Let's focus on preventative care. You know, I went after a federal grant for the Capital Region Education Council so that we could provide wellness programs to make sure people go to the doctor before they need it to catch things. I implemented that one of the first in my town to implement wellness programs. And we found people, we avoided quadruple bypass surgery because one of our employees hadn't been to a doctor in years and finally went to a doctor and they caught it. So let's keep people healthy. Let's find ways to make sure that we focus on wellness and it will save us money and that's how we'll pay for it.
Thank you. John, 30 seconds.
I think this is an issue that is so huge in this country. And I think what has to happen is we have to start thinking about the people that are affected, the people who have no other option but to receive this insurance. So much of our protections go to the industry, the insurance companies, the pharmaceutical companies. This has to be about people. Medicare and access to health care should not be a for-profit industry. That's not how we take care of our people. So we have to sit down and look at ways to ensure that this is done in an affordable way. That
No, very nice, very nice. We're closing. There have already been several attacks on workers' rights with the Janus decision and workers not being able to come together as a class action suit around work issues. And then the possibilities of the Obergefell case possibly being overturned as a direct assault on people with looking for marriage equality, making sure that people who love one another can marry one another. So what legislative remedies would you propose or work for around these issues with the Supreme Court change?
It's really scary with the Supreme Court changing because a lot of the hope that we had to attack legislation through the courts is now going to be harder for us. So the role of local officials and state officials is going to be even more important and stronger. And we're going to need to lock hands to make sure that we attack all these threats to our values from all levels of government. You know, the Janus decision is just the beginning of threatening. You know, while we're expanding dark money and allowing corporates to donate money without knowing, we're taking away the right of unions to collect from their members and to influence the political process. That's wrong. We can work with our next governor to introduce legislation and to make sure that we protect those rights. But it's going to be hard unless we take back the House and have a majority in the House so that we can fight and be a check and balance in this administration. This administration is going to continue to bulldoze over our rights. So this election is so important. The stakes are so high. We need to respect everyone. We need to respect people regardless of their faith, their race, their sexual orientation. We need to make sure that we pass laws at the state level and we fight for those laws at the federal level.
Thank you. When I think about the Supreme Court and what's happening right now, I recognize that these are generational shifts that are happening. These are things that we've already fought for. You know, when I look at unions and collective bargaining and the Janus decision, I support unions. I support the right for people to organize and to collectively bargain. Everyone won't be happy with what they get walking away from the table, but they at least should have the opportunity to be at the table and make an argument for what it is they think they need, employers and employees. We have to protect those rights. The Supreme Court interprets the law. They should be interpreting the law in a way where all people have voice. And I think that's across every issue. When you talk about marriage equality, the other thing that you said, this is an issue that we have to look at as a human and a civil right. All people have a human and a civil right to enjoy a prosperous life in this country. But when we start separating into groups, again, you can't wait until someone comes for you. We have to look at all people as having dignity and value. I remember the day I graduated with my postgraduate degree. I went to the store to pick up something because after church we were going to have people at my house. And a car pulled up beside me, and the man called me the N-word. I'm 40 years old. Well, I was then. And I was at the height of my accomplishment, had just gotten 2 graduate degrees, and all he saw was the N-word. We have to have a country where everybody has value and a Supreme Court that defends and protects those values. This is about human and civil rights for everybody who's in this country. Think about it. If a parent is putting their kid on a boat, that means the land must be that much more dangerous.
Thank you.
Taking away the rights of unions to organize, and then not allowing them to be able to fight back. It only allows this president, who's inflaming some of the rhetoric and some of the conversation that Jahana just spoke about, the anti-Semitism, the racism, the attacks against religion, the attacks against sexual orientation. So it's important that people are involved in the process. It's so important that we elect people who are going to fight and work hard to protect all rights. It's important that unions have a right to be part of that process as well.
Thank you. So unfortunately, our time is drawing nigh, so I'm going to skip really to our final question before the closing statements. This will start with Jahana. So asking both of you, since this seat is critically important for Connecticut and really, I think everybody will agree, for our nation, would you commit to each other to supporting the endorsed Democratic primary winner in the general election?
Am I voting?
So after, on August 15th, after the primary is over, would you commit to endorse Mary if Mary wins, and then Mary the same person, vice versa for you?
Yes, I mean, after the, can I?
Absolutely.
Well, I think so much is, because I've been asked this question many times, and I'm not sure what people imagine will happen or what people think. I'm a Democrat. I believe in democratic ideas. I have no intention of trying to separate this party. Actually, the whole reason I got into this race is because I recognize that we are in trouble, and I want to bring people together. Everything that I've done everything that I said. I mean, I'm going to fight for it because I think it's important, and I think that everybody should fight for it every single time. We should never take it for granted. We should never think that we don't have to work for it. So I am going to fight for it up to August 14th. And at 8:01, I will have emptied my tank and done everything that I could to secure this nomination. But under no circumstances would I ever, as a Democrat, walk away and try to get the people who supported me now to forget the much bigger picture. This has so little to do with me. This is not about Jahana Hayes. I've been asked multiple times to run for elected office at every level. At every level. Local, state, board, at every level. I've been asked to leave the state and work in other states. I believe in the people in the state. I believe in the communities. I know that I have a valuable perspective that I can add. I believe in what we do as Democrats. We are the party of the people. If you're worried about health care, if you're worried about home ownership, you're worried about your kids' education, chances are you're a Democrat. I will not do anything to stray from that. That is who I am. And when someone shows you who they are, believe them.
Thank you.
So when this seat opened up just a few weeks ago, I stepped up because I was so committed to making sure that this seat stays blue for our state, for our country. You know, when I ran for office in Simsbury, it was under Republican control for 40 years. I stepped up. No one asked me to. I thought it was the right thing to do. It was because I wanted to give back. And it's really important. It's important that we keep this seat. It's important that we have someone who goes to Washington, who understands how local and state government works. And every time you put your name on the ballot, there's only one or two things that are going to happen. You're going to win or you're going to lose. But it's so important that we have people to put their name on the ballot and not worry about winning or losing, but worrying about the people they represent, worrying about making a difference in people's lives. The women that have run for office in Connecticut, Ella Grasso, who won and served many years. Nancy Wyman, who ran and was lieutenant governor. The women who've run and won, the women who've run and lost, have made it easier for me. And I'm making it easier for the next woman to run. And that's what being a Democrat's all about. And that's what I've done for 25 years. Making sure that we elect people, making sure that we speak up, making sure when it's hard to run for office, and it's hard to run for office, it doesn't matter how many times you've run, or how many times you've won, or how many times you've lost. It matters stepping up, making a difference. We all know somebody who tried to run for office, ran and lost 8 elections, election after election, and finally won one. His name was Abraham Lincoln. It's a good thing he stepped up. I ask for your support on August 14th.
Well, 30 seconds?
Oh, yes, of course I'm going to support you.
Because there are so many women who have run for office, and I guess courage is contagious, but I also know that there are so many women who did not run because they can't imagine themselves reflected. They've never seen anything like it. They don't think they have a place in our history. This election reminds me what I can do for those women as well.